Prynhawn da, everybody. Welcome to the afternoon session of You from Wales. My name's Lindsay Cordery-Bruce. I am the Chief Executive of the Wallage. I'm a service provider in Wales, essentially tackling homelessness. And we exist to do three things. That's to get people off the streets, keep people off the streets, and to create opportunities so that nobody goes back. I'd like to introduce the co-chair this afternoon. This is Raymond Walsh, also known as Rusty, who's going to be helping out with the question and answer session and also giving a view on his experience. And we'll be delighted to introduce our Minister very, very shortly. A lot's been achieved in Wales during the pandemic and in the years preceding that. What we found is new funding's become available, new tools have become available, there's new strategy in place. And I feel like the momentum that we've gathered in Wales has been significant, particularly over recent times. And as a service provider, I've just witnessed the community do this, like from big business wanting to get involved, from the community coming forward and saying, how can I help to end homelessness? And I don't think that I was alone as a service provider when I punched the air when we found out that we were keeping Julie James as our minister. What Julie's achieved in her last term was considerable. Formed the Homeless Action Group for Wales, where we've essentially plotted out what do we need to do to end homelessness here. But then we looked at the size of the portfolio. So you've got environment, you've got energy, you've got transport. This is a big brief. So what I'm really interested to learn is how do we keep the magnifying glass on ending homelessness? How do we make sure we keep that momentum that we've built? So over to you, Julie James, to open our session. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks very much, Lindsay. And that's really nice of you to say that. But I was really chuffed to keep the homelessness, housing actually, in its myriad forms as part of this big new brief. A daunting brief, but a real challenge. And I should have listened to my mother and been careful what I wish for, perhaps, because it was something I had discussed with Mark, the First Minister, beforehand. And so I was absolutely delighted when he asked me if I would take it on with together with Lee Waters, who's the Deputy Minister in the brief. The other big new brief in the Welsh Government, though, is the Social Justice Minister, with my colleague Jane Hutt there. And that's a very important priority as well, because what it demonstrates is that ending homelessness in all its forms is a top priority for us. It was last time, it still is. It's part of a big social justice agenda. So this is about social justice, climate change as social justice in its widest forms. So, we've put environment and social justice at the heart of our decision making, and ending homelessness in Wales is an absolutely critical part of that agenda. Absolutely it is. And to do that in a way that doesn't damage our planet, is a huge big driver. It was for us before, and it still remains a driver for us now. Lindsay said quite a bit in that short contribution of what I'm most proud of in Wales. So when we had put the Homelessness Action Group into place, we'd got John Sparks to chair it for us, which is a real coup as well. And we brought together the whole community in Wales in that action group, really. And we got them to give us a blueprint, and fortunately, just serendipity really, you guys had just delivered it as the pandemic hit. And we were due to have a conversation about how long it would take us to implement the action plan, and in fact I think we did it in 4 weeks or 6 weeks or something completely bonkers. But I absolutely agree with you, Lindsay. The community did do this. We pulled together in a way that was just heartwarming. And I just take every opportunity I can to pay tribute to all the people out there who work together across all kinds of boundaries to make that happen. So we didn't really understand the scale of the problem. We knew that the rough sleep accounts were inadequate. We knew they probably didn't pick up women. We knew that there were all kinds of hidden things, but we didn't really know what the scale of the problem was. We now get monthly management data from all the local authorities in Wales, and we're still refining that, but we've got well, around 6,000 people have been housed over the pandemic. So that will have picked up, people who are street homeless, right at the sharp end of homelessness. But of course, it picked up a lot of people who were pretty near street homeless, so sofa surfing, very, very insecure temporary forms of accommodation, spare rooming, all that kind of stuff, because the pandemic exposed that, because people couldn't share each other's homes in that way, and so on. But we've put in place a system to connect the monthly management data from our local authorities. It's difficult to draw comparisons back to pre-pandemic days, really, but we've still got around 1,000 people a month presenting for homelessness type services across Wales. So we've still got a big issue to look at, and as we always said, we've started to transform homelessness services away from the kind of gatekeeping, rationing approach that we had before into a truly inclusive, sort this person's problems out, the person in front of you agency, no matter which agency picks you up first. And we'll sort out the gubbins behind the scenes afterwards. And I've been absolutely clear all the way through that we are not going back to where we were before. There'd be no going back for us to the rationing system, although that's easy to say, and I'll come on to quite what the challenges are to make that happen as well. So, I was really grateful to the Homelessness Action Group, and I don't say that lightly. They did a lot of work. You guys did a lot of work. The sector did a lot of work to come together and put that action plan in place. And in fact, John is doing another piece of work for us now about how to keep the momentum going, which I'm really keen to do. So, the transformation that we want is going to take a number of years. We've got to build our way out of the crisis. And as I said, we've got to build our way in a non-planet busting way out of the crisis. So you'll all be familiar, I'm sure, with the innovative housing programme we've been running in Wales. We're now going to scale that up. So our social housing providers are using those templates to build the new social housing we need. But we've also got a number of other transformational type things that we're doing. So we're looking to take houses in the PRS, bring them up to social house standards, and make those available in the short term, because we're never going to be able to build our way out of the temporary crisis we've got. And we're looking at innovative ways of just getting people out of the very temporary and inadequate accommodation they're currently in into much better, we hope, just one interim stage. I'm really hopeful to have people not have to move more than twice in their route to a permanent home. But we're going to have to think really creatively across Wales to get every single piece of suitable accommodation into play here that we possibly can. There's some politics to this as well. So we're already arguing with the UK government about the fact that they've frozen the local housing allowance at 30% of the pre-pandemic year. And if they keep it frozen there, we know that's just going to cause us a big problem. And when it wasn't even at the median point where it should be already. So we will need to look at really innovative solutions. I'd love to be able to say that we will pay private sector landlords who allow us to bring their houses up to social house standard, the local housing allowance, and have that be an attractive offer. But obviously the further away from the median rent it is, the less attractive that offer, and that happens in cities as well. But of course, we aren't ever going to solve homelessness at the sharp end. We've got to solve it by prevention. So we're also putting an enormous amount of focus on the social justice side of this, on the prevention side of this. So this is working with colleagues across the various agencies. So a lot of advice agencies, relationship breakdown agencies, anti-discrimination, LGBT, youth services, and so on, mental health, substance abuse support things, the police, particularly the PCSOs, the youth engagement teams across local authorities. There's an enormous wealth of people working in this field that we need to bring to bear on this prevention agenda as well. We've absolutely got to do something about the 1,000 people a month presenting across all local authority services in Wales. We simply cannot build our way out of that as a way forward. So we've got to be able to do that. You'll know, of course, that we've got the housing support grant here in Wales, supporting people to live independently, helping them to maintain tenancies and so on. So I was delighted to be able to put that grant up very substantially, another £40 million into that grant. So about a 32% increase increase just before the election. So really chuffed to be able to do that, and we'll be looking to keep that piece of work going as well. And you know, we've got an enormous commitment to try and make the jobs of the future around our housing agenda as well. So we've got a huge retrofit program we're about to embark on, and I am really keen on making sure that the people you know, who really need the kind of social justice bit of this agenda are able to build into that. So we're going to be re-looking at our private sector programs, our Bed and Nest and things like that, to see if we can drive more jobs out of it, get a better product out of it, and retrofit people in the private sector's housing. And I'm particularly interested in looking at the private rented sector here, so that we can assist private rented sector landlords to bring their houses up to standard, either by actually handing them across to social landlords for long periods of time in return for the investment in the house, or by grant aiding them and various other schemes that we can do. What we really need to guard against is not driving people out of being landlords in the private rented sector by putting too onerous a burden on them so that they just take their houses out of use, because that will just drive another form of homelessness that we have. So I'll end up just by saying a couple of the challenges that we have, because we will be asking the sector to look at these challenges. So we have a real nerdy, if you don't mind me using that word, kind of legal challenge here. So at the moment, we're using the coronavirus regulations, one of the only good things they've been used for, to suspend priority need and intentionality and various other things. We've currently got suspended evictions from private rented sector still ongoing here in Wales till the end of June. What we've got to do is we've got to have a long-term approach to completely redoing housing legislation in Wales, so that we don't have a rationing system and we do have a proper system in place that looks at people's needs. But we've also got to find an interim fix, because otherwise we will go back, because the legislation will just default back into play again. So I've got to find a mechanism really quickly to stop that happening. And I certainly don't have all the solutions. So we'll be looking across the sector. And as I said, I've asked John to have a look at it again. How can we do that in the interim so that we don't have any going back? And the last thing I will say is that we need to work on the hearts and minds of the people in the homelessness services across local government, who have also been starved of funds and who have a terrible job, let's be clear, on a day-to-day basis, to get them to come with us along that journey and not regard themselves as the gatekeepers, as some of them have in the past. Although I've been really heartened by speaking to people in the sector about how lovely it is not to be in that role and actually to be able to sort people's problems out. People have really embraced that as approach. So yeah, so data and evidence are absolutely heart of this approach. How I get resources out of my financial colleagues in the government is all about the data, what we can do, what we can use coming through. And, you know, in the end, it's just about the culture that we want to have here in Wales, a socially just culture that doesn't kill our planet, and make sure that our people are warm and safe in their own homes. I'm really happy to answer questions and so on, and I'm really sorry I have to go at 2, but I think Lindy did start off by reading out a few of the small things that I've got on my plate at the moment. So I'll leave it there. Diolch yn fawr, everyone.
Diolch, Minister. That's a really useful summary of where you're at, and gives us some great insight into where you are with things. I think a comment that you made that jumped out at me was saying jobs of the future are built around the housing agenda. Well, possibly there might be a way to build treatment and support around the environment agenda, which is one of the reasons that Ray's come to share some of his experience with us. But before we come on to that, Ray, what's your response to what the Minister's just said? What did you think of all that?
It's lovely to hear that someone from the Welsh Assembly speak with such passion about homelessness. And yeah. What was surprised me was the inaccurate count of rough sleepers, and what could we do to get a better count. I know the breakfast run does a count as well, but they're not able to meet everybody, like, you know. I think a collaboration with outreach would be a good thing as well, because outreach do some really amazing things as well with people. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
It would be for everyone to bring their numbers in together and make it count.
Yeah, it's so difficult because homelessness is so often hidden.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, especially with street homelessness, the people are tucked away in little places where they don't want to be seen. Yeah, so it is. I understand it is very hard, like, you know.
Yeah. And just I would say on that as well, Rusty, that it's the count is important because that enables us to understand what services are necessary to sustain life and so on. But we're really keen not to sustain people on the streets. So it's about getting people to understand the services available to them to actually get their lives, back in. And a lot of that is about trust. So making sure that we do fund the outreach services for long enough for people to be able to establish a relationship with people and try and get them to trust, because many people in that situation have had terrible experiences of authority figures and so on, and so they're not very trusting, quite understandably. So trying to get people to come into services, and one of the things that the pandemic has let us do is get people into services who were very distrustful before. And I've had some really heartwarming chats with people online about the fact that now that they've got into services, it's helped them turn their lives around. But it is all about that, isn't it? It's about trying to get people to self-identify as well as just count them, so that we can get hold of them and get them the services they require, as opposed to what's happened before is you just got a door slammed in your face. So why would you bother to be in touch with people, really? So I'm really keen on getting that interaction properly running as well.
What do you think about that, Rusty? How do we build trust as service providers? What could the minister do? Have you ever experienced those things of like feeling like you got the door slammed in your face?
Yeah, it was hard when like I've gone for assessments and they've said, "Oh, you're not a priority."
Yeah.
But and then people like have to go and sleep on floor space and things like that. It's not a nice environment. It's lots of people that don't know, all strangers in one place from all kinds of walks of life. It's to get a trust with someone from the beginning and to assure them that there is help there, and I know it's hard with funds and things like that.
This is where the community can really come together and wrap support around people, and that's certainly what we've been trying to do at the Woolwich during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, what was your experience of accessing services during this time?
Considering we was in a pandemic, I think the Woolwich did amazing things. And
I'll slip you that $5 later. I didn't set him up for that, I promise.
Yeah, being with the Zoom meetings was a big help for me. They're the highlight of my week. Being able to talk to people in a similar situation before the pandemic as well, with the bees.
Yeah.
As well, nature is a big thing for me, and it's been a rock in my recovery. So yeah.
Yeah, so Rusty and I worked on a project last summer about beekeeping and using that therapeutically.
Yeah.
And we've invited you to visit our hives, Julie, if you're up
Great.
for that challenge. But I think what we discussed earlier, wasn't it, Rusty, was about, well, what is the opportunity then with having environment and housing in the same portfolio? Actually, nature heals people. These two things can really help each other. What's your vision about that, Julie?
Yeah, so absolutely. One of the things we've been really keen to do in building the new housing that we've got in Wales is not just about the house being carbon neutral, easy to live in, very low bills, all those kinds of things, good insulation and stuff, but it's about it being situated in an area which has good green infrastructure. So, good open spaces around it, cycling routes, walking routes, access to the countryside or parks, all that kind of stuff. I've got myself into terrible trouble earlier on in my political career, but I'm not sorry, because I told the big builders that they were building the slums of the future. because they're building these housing estates with too many houses on them, not enough trees, not enough green, not enough places for people to play and so on. So we are really determined to stop that. The planning system has a big lag in it. So you've got 5 years to build out a planning permission. It's really frustrating. So we put new rules in, they take 5 years to kind of have an impact. So we're looking at ways to accelerate that as well. We're looking at ways to work with builders to persuade them to do the right thing, as well as make them do it legally. And, you know, we're absolutely trying to build the houses that suit people. So Lindsay, I know you've heard me say this before. I don't think you have, Rusty. So, you know, if you put me in a tower block flat in the middle of a city, I'd be very unhappy. But I'm not that kind of person. But I have 2 children who'd be very, very happy in a tower block in the middle of a city. That's what they like. But they would also like to live near a park and, you know, whatever. They like the big city stuff. You have to put people in the houses that suit them, but you also have to give them access to the right infrastructure. So if you're out in the country, you need access to good public transport and jobs and other things. And if you're in the city, you need access to good green infrastructure and parks and so on. So we need to be able to do both those things. We need to be able to put a planning system in place that allows us to build the housing that suits individuals. So some people like high dense, lots of people city type things, and other people don't. But we need to put people in the right place. We don't need to just pick you up and put you in the next house that's available and hope that you'll thrive there. And to do that, we have to build a good range of good housing across Wales, so you know that people can stay in the communities they grew up in, they don't have to leave, or they can, you know, find jobs there and so on. And that goes for our cities as well, that we don't build cities that are just deserts of concrete and, you know, unsafe places to. We want our kids to be able to play in the streets and so on. One of the nice things about the pandemic in cities is that the streets came back to life. You actually saw kids playing out in them again because there weren't any cars on them. So the big transport issue, to, you know, our love affair with the car, the 20th century love affair with the car, is a big problem for us. We've got to try and get people's mindsets to change. And this is all about what we talk about, a sense of place. So it's not just about a house, is it? It's about a home. It's about a place, a community, you know, that you want to live in. So we've got a lot of work to do across Wales to get people to take an interest and feel that they can change the place that they live in. You know, feel that their voice can be heard. You know, so we've got a challenge ahead of us to get that to happen, to get people out of their cars.
Thank you, and I certainly haven't missed the traffic jams, Julie. Before we open the question and answer session, I know being housed in the right place has certainly been something that was important to you, and you've taken a job recently, haven't you, in just the ideal environment. Tell us about that. It's awesome.
Yeah, basically, I went to stay with a friend for the weekend in Llanstefan, which is next to Lan, which is the next village over from where Dylan Thomas comes from, and I've absolutely fell in love with the place. So I started off as a pot washer, and 2 weeks later I was promoted to sous chef, and I just love that. I fell in love with the place. I've got a view of the castle outside my window, and I walk down on the beach every morning barefoot and get grounded, listen to the birds and the waves rolling in, and it's just enjoying all the scenery, and it's just amazing, and it's so good for my mental health, my energy and my vibration, and yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, the location is key in a sense.
Yeah,
but it's hard to fit everyone in, I know, into them beautiful places, and I was lucky I've got this opportunity. Like,
so Rusty, I think on that, it isn't that hard. We just have to be creative about it. We have to build the right kinds of houses that suit their landscape, that don't leave a big carbon footprint, don't destroy the countryside. It can be done. We just have to want to do it.
Yeah.
We're in a beautiful place, and there's so many opportunities, and I don't think I'm the only service provider that'll say our teams are at your disposal, Julie. We want to see this happen as much as you and as much as Rusty does. I'm seeing some great questions start to trickle in. There was one from a friend of mine, Robin Johnson, who wants to know about whether there's going to be any sort of contract flexibility built in so that we can maintain those long-term relationships even when funding might be scarce.
Yeah, so the funding issue is a constant, you know, nuisance to us. What we'd really like to be able to move to is multi-annual contracts for people, so we don't have this constant churn. so people can have secure, you know, the things I just talked about. They can have fair work and secure jobs in doing the kinds of jobs that we want them to do. So, you know, service support jobs, outreach jobs, and so on. They shouldn't be temporary contracts on minimum wage, constant churn. We drive that because we fund it on an annual basis because of the way our budgets run. So we've been putting, sorry, again, impossible to do this without being political, so, and I'm a politician, so I'm going to stop apologizing for it, but we've been really pushing the UK government to properly do a spending review and then give us a chance to have multi-annual budgets, so, you know, budgets that span the whole of the next Senedd term, for example, so that we could come out and say to you, you will have absolute certainty that you will have this much money over 3 years or 5 years preferably, and then you can give people decent contracts of employment. They can, you know, you can have the service continuity that you want. And even in a tight budget, if you know with certainty how much you're going to get and that it has inflation built into it and so on, then you can get some more flexibility. We are not in that position at the moment. It's no good pretending we are. We're still getting annual budgets from the UK government. So we've still got this ridiculous situation where at the beginning of the year, we're very tight for money. And then towards the end of January, you know, you'll know, Lindsay, we start ringing around people saying, got any use for £10 million capital, because we've got to get out the door by the end of March. I mean, nobody in their right mind would run anything like that. So anything you can do to help us put pressure on the UK government to see some sense and give us some longer term budgeting, we'd like that. But we've also been doing some work on core budgets that we know we will have for longer term, you know, well, I say no, you know, assuming the UK government doesn't have some attack of austerity fit or something, which I really, really hope it doesn't do, that we will have core budgets. So at least we can give some certainty over longer term for the core of the budget. But I'd like to be able to do that at the higher level so that you can keep all, you know, you can keep the people in their posts for longer. And that, of course, brings benefits for the workers as well, doesn't it? Because they too have continuity and, you know, they can afford to, they know they can pay their rent or their mortgage, wherever it is, over a longer term. We don't have that churn, because that kind of temporary insecure employment, that's no good for anyone.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've seen a comment come in on the chat there from Jenny Thompson. Everyone needs a home to be put in. Are we any closer to having a human right to housing in Wales?
So I'm really keen on doing that, but I'm very cautious about it, because I know, and it's, you know, it's an awful thing for a housing minister to have to say in any country, but I know that at this point in time, we cannot guarantee everyone an adequate home in Wales. We just haven't built them fast enough over the last 40 years. Again, very political reasons for that, conservative right to buy policies and all the rest of it, but whatever. But we can build them now. And so what I'd like to have is a pathway that by the end of this Senedd term, we will have a right to adequate housing, because we will have empowered our local authorities and our registered social landlords to build the houses we need, and therefore we know that they ought to be able to give somebody an adequate house. But if you do it the other way around, you know, what's the penalty for it? You don't want to get to a position where you're just breaching that right as a matter of course because we know we can't do it. And also I could say, at a strategic level, we agree that people have a right to an adequate house. I'm saying it now. I agree, you have a human right to an adequate house. But I'd like you to be able to actually enforce that right. So I'd like, you know, Rusty or me to be able to pitch up on my local authority and say, where is my adequate house? I can't do that if they can't do it, because we'll just end up dissipating all the money and legal fees and wrangles and all the rest of it. So it is about finding, with the sector, a route from where we are now to the human right, you know, an enforceable human right to adequate housing. And I don't see why that should take us longer than the end of this Senedd term, but that's my take on it. I know that there are lots of other views about putting it first and driving it that way and so on. I'm very happy to talk about that, you know, on a much longer basis, but the big issue is to actually deliver it.
Yeah, I'm very aware you need to go very imminently, so I'll just hand over to Rusty for a response to that.
Well, it's amazing to hear you speak the way you do about homelessness, and yeah, and I look forward to seeing the better things to come. And thank you very much.
Yeah,
I hope so too, Rusty. I really do. I think we can do it together here in Wales. We really can. We've shown what we can do already in the last year. So, you know, together we can pull it off, I think.
Yeah,
I certainly think so. So, diolch yn fawr iawn, to Julie James. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to keep this question and answer session going.
I'll see you all
there's still
soon.
much to
I've got to go.
discuss.
Bye, Minister.
Bye.
Bye, Julie. Thank you so much.
Bye.
So someone's put in the comments here, completely agree with everything that our Minister Julie has said, but the key challenge is about delivering on those promises. I mean, we can talk about what we want to see in Wales till we're blue in the face.
Yeah.
Do you think we can do it?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
What changes have you seen then in sort of the way we used to deal with homelessness to the way that we deal with it now?
There's a lot of empathy and compassion and a passion. What I've seen with the College that's what I love. And yeah, I think housing first is going to be a big thing. It's the future. And giving people a chance to get into a safe environment. I love the fact that with the College, how much they tried in the pandemic as well. And yeah, I would have been lost without the College in a way. I'd probably still be where I am. So yeah.
I absolutely promise you I am not paying him to say these things. And it wasn't it wasn't just the College that stepped up. I think Wales stepped up.
Yeah.
And I think I applaud the local authorities and I applaud Welsh Government, because it wasn't just that everyone was saying, oh, there's a pandemic, isn't it terrible, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Everyone put their money where their mouth was. Everybody got projects off the ground that we couldn't do before. And actually it came with, 40 million quid of investment from Welsh Government. We're being able to do loads of stuff with that.
Yeah, and it was nice to see that there was no hope, hardly anybody on the streets, as well. That was really good.
People did come in, and people that we couldn't get to before, who wouldn't engage before, are now in treatment as a result. And that's just, that's a result and a half. We're not out of the woods yet. We've got a lot of people now in temporary accommodation that now need a sustainable home.
Yeah.
But the plans are there. It's just whether we can deliver them quickly enough, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
There's a great question that's come in for you here, Rusty. Sorry, my mask is going on a walk down my face. If you could change one thing about the way the system works, what would that be?
What would it be? So the system, I would say that's the gateway. And I would remove floor space. It doesn't work for a lot of people. There's people going into that environment that they're seeing things they've never seen before and being introduced to things and that they've never seen before. And because unfortunately with homelessness, there is substance misuse and alcoholism. And it's not, for people that don't engage in them things, it's frightening. I've seen it happen, and it's not nice at all. So I would try and find a way of making a bigger, maybe a super hostel or something like that. So people have got their own individual space. I think that's key, and then a quicker move on to accommodation, as in housing first.
Yeah, I think you're saying what we're all thinking, and one of the things that we looked at as part of the Homeless Action Group, for those of you that don't know what the Homeless Action Group is, the Minister pulled together 12 of us around Wales with the question, how do we end homelessness, what needs to be in place, what policies and legislation do we need, what do services need to look like, and we produced 4 reports with recommendations on that. One of those is to ditch floor space, to ditch priority need, to ditch people haven't approved their intentionality around homelessness and all of those things. So these things were already kind of being talked about before the pandemic hit, which I think is really, really heartwarming. What does having your own personal space mean to you?
Oh, it's everything. My own space is everything. I can create my own happy environment in there, and it's peace of mind and a building block for you to work on your future as well. So yeah, it's key.
Yeah, it's absolutely key. And
It's
I think when people have been through enough already, we have a big push in Wales on about trauma-informed services. We know that people have been through stuff. And actually our services aren't somewhere to crash anymore. This is a springboard for healing from. And that's very much sort of the angle that we're taking at the Woolwich in terms of focusing more on longer term accommodation, getting people a long-term home rather than just somewhere to sort things out from. And that's where sort of nature and environmental stuff comes in as well. So just after this, we're going to go and see some beehives, aren't we? I did a big research study last summer about whether beekeeping could be used to help people with substance misuse issues, and the findings of that haven't been published yet. But one of the things that came up was that actually some of the things that we offer in services are just too boring. And I certainly found that when I found my recovery 26 years ago, I'm showing my age now, that actually you go from this sort of lifestyle that is a little bit on the edge, and you do get a stimulus from that, don't you? And then they kind of put you in a coffee morning. So one of the things that we're looking at with the bees is how we expose people to controlled risk and how that becomes an exciting part of just building your life. Everybody needs to have some excitement in their life. So Rusty, you're an accomplished beekeeper now. You're a mountain biker. What does that what does that excitement mean to you?
It's everything. I'm passionate about it. There's more to nature than meets the eye, especially bees as well. I just love being with nature now. It heals me, it calms me, it energizes me, gives me inspiration, and
This is the stuff that sustains recovery, isn't it? How long has it been for you?
I'm coming up to 18 months now.
That's awesome, isn't it? That's awesome. I absolutely love it.
18 months.
Absolutely love it. There's a question come through to me about how closely the providers of homelessness services work together, and could you do even better? I think when we said that the community did this, we weren't underestimating that. We saw partnerships come about that just were never on the cards before. And I think what we've been able to do really well across Wales is, rather than just sort of like pretending that we all work as partners with everybody and that everything's lovely and nice, we've been able to really align with the partners who share our values and that share the vision and the ambition that we have for the people that we support. So I think the relationships that were already there, that were working well, are now working brilliantly. And actually some of the relationships that we work together because we kind of have to, we've been able to find new boundaries there, and actually to focus on getting better outcomes for the people that we support. So one of the examples I can give is T. Tom Jones in Swansea. They're all self-contained units. We had a Pobble Group who owned the building. We had Swansea Council who had the money. And there was us and a service called GoLID who went in and provided the support. And we got that going in the pandemic in 6 weeks, which is insane. So it just goes to show, like, if there's an emergency and if we treat homelessness like the emergency that it is, the system can get out of its own way and partners can bring together their collective awesomeness to do well. There's another question here for you, Rusty. Would you say that it worked for you, or had it more to do with the quality of the relationships involved? So was it the relationships involved, or was it sort of the service that you had that made a difference?
It's definitely the relationships, because that creates trust and gives a hope, I suppose. And it's a mixture of both. You've got to have both, I would say. Definitely.
Social capital is something that we talk about a lot in services, and just building the resources that you need to be okay. And we're social animals. People are part of that. So you've built some key relationships recently, haven't you, in your journey, as things have been going really well?
We have a shadow board, and we have WISE and the PM entering as well. And we've just a group of us have just recently graduated from WISE, and it was like I said, the highlight of my week. And we've all similar people going on similar journeys, and it's really nice to share what we're experiencing through the week, and we all support each other. And definitely.
I think one of the things that we've been really trying to emphasize is that at the Woolwich we're a community rather than a service, and that's for the people we support and the people who are offering the support as well. So I think when people come together, that's when things really start to change, isn't it? There's a question come through for me. In addition to the shared strategies like the one Julie mentioned, which arrangements could be made that make the relationship between government commissioners, service providers more effective? For example, funding arrangements, monitoring data, accountability mechanisms. Great question, thank you. What we've been crying out for quite some time, and certainly since I arrived in Wales 10 years ago, is ministerial collaboration across portfolios, and then for everything under that strategically in Wales to follow suit. So things like health, social care, criminal justice, all of those things need to no longer operate in silos. And I think with the recent cabinet reshuffle, we're starting to get that right in Wales. So I see a lot of opportunities, especially with Jane Hutt's portfolio as well, about social justice. This is going to help us to align strategically, align resources, align services to make sure that we're dealing with the causes, the root causes of homelessness, rather than just sort of putting sticky plasters on everything. So I think everything hangs off that for me. And I think with the way that relationships have been forged during the pandemic, if we can just keep that momentum, I can't wait to get John Sparks's report from Crisis about how we keep that momentum in Wales. I think we'll do really well. But I think ministerial collaboration, joint strategy, funding arrangements that reflect that. We're already starting to see in Wales some of our major funders forcing that to happen. Like, for example, the National Lottery Community Fund. Part of getting a share of the 10 million that's available at the moment is that we have to collaborate and we have to come together. And I absolutely welcome that with both hands. It's been really refreshing. Any other questions? Anything else coming through? We'll go quiet for a moment, so we'll just have a chat. Oh, here we are. Which are the challenges and opportunities you can identify by bringing together housing, homelessness and climate change? How do we bring those different priorities together under a wider agenda? I'm glad you asked. I really strongly believe actually that people in the environment can help each other. And I think what integrating support with environmental interventions and what we call green care, I think the opportunity there is staring us right in the face in Wales. And I think across Europe, they've taken these opportunities with both hands. Green care's really got some momentum across Europe. But look at Wales. Look at Wales and how beautiful it is, how much nature we have on our doorstep, and how much healing there is from not just people experiencing homelessness, but mental health, various other parts of the community. We have a problem with loneliness, just the same as everywhere else in the UK. Well, actually, how do those things come together? What you need when you're in recovery, and what I certainly found, is I just needed a purpose. I needed a sense of purpose. I needed a sense of autonomy. I needed something a little bit more exciting than a blooming coffee morning. And that becomes the thing that you change your life from. What do you think, Rusty, is how it is for you?
Definitely. Like I say, the coffee morning things and formal things, it would be nice. I would like to start taking people out with nature and give them inspiration to live a better life and a happy life, which is what we're all entitled to as well. And it's our human right, let's just say that. So, yeah, definitely being out with nature, getting out in the outdoors, and it does heal nature heals all. So, yeah, definitely need to get out with nature more, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great question come through. What do you think is the role for experimentation and trying new things? More than agreeing with the statement, can you share any new things that the Woolwich are working on? Yes. The Woolwich are about to embark on something called the Festival of Dangerous Ideas, where we're basically looking at, if we had a magic wand and if we could do anything to try and make an impact on homelessness in Wales, what would it be? So it's kind of going to be like a Dragon's Den type thing, where Rusty and I are going to go to our trustees. We're going to present our ideas for various initiatives. Beekeeping will be one of them, and care farming, things like that, things that I'm very, very interested in. And then we'll let you know sort of how that transpires, what the risk appetite is from our board, and then how we're going to resource it. But I think we're in a really awkward position in Wales, where we've got health and housing that's devolved. We've got criminal justice that's still under central government in England. And that creates a real sense of awkwardness when you're trying to do innovative things to help people recover from substance use. So we know that the Misuse of Drugs Act is 50 this year. We know that it hasn't been successful. And actually, we need alternatives for the way that we treat people who have problems with substances. Actually, you can become addicted to nature. There's other things out there that can fill that hole, rather than just saying, right, here's some counselling, let's deal with your trauma. That has its place. Absolutely, we welcome that with both hands. But what's really going to make you get up in the morning and go, oh yeah, I can't wait to do that today? That's the difference that makes the difference. So it's, well, how do we create that with our services? How do we help people to find that? And rather than just sort of creating different sub-communities of people who've experienced homelessness together, how about integration into the wider community? Because actually we're all the same. And we don't want to segregate the people we support. They have as much right and as much to contribute to the community and to society as everyone else. So that's kind of where I would love to take it. What can we do to challenge stereotypes of people who experience homelessness? What do you think of that one, Rusty?
I think it's encouraging them to want to live a better life. Is giving them encouragement and to show that there is hope, because a lot of people lose hope, and it's just about showing them the light. I think. Yeah.
But what's the role of sort of working with other people that have achieved recovery and achieving their life goals? How much does that mean to someone who's in the thick of it?
Everything.
Mm-hmm.
It means everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does for me. Yeah, helping them achieve goals as well is key.
Yeah.
And putting opportunities in place.
Yeah.
As well, definitely.
Yeah, and I think what was powerful, like when I went through it a very long time ago, was being able to say, I want to be where she is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't know what it looks like, do you?
Yeah.
So just having those peers.
Yes.
You're about to start being a peer supporter, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Looking forward to that.
Yeah. So we try and create opportunities at the Woolwich where we can be that for somebody else.
Yeah.
In many cases, intentions are all good, but they fail to do good things. This is a really important point from Gillamore. We've got to test the new things that we do robustly. On our board, we have a professor who is literally in charge of doing that. We know that sometimes what might seem really obvious for helping with homelessness can actually do more harm. So we're going to be keeping a very close ear to the ground on how we evaluate these initiatives and make sure that we're drawing on the best evidence available to make sure that our initiatives are justifiable and that there's enough evidence for it to be based on to show that it's got the best chance of being effective. But also I think it's important as service providers to admit when it's not working as well. I think it's too tempting sometimes to go, oh, we must save face and we must pretend that this had great outcomes when sometimes it didn't. So that's an important part of it as well. Great question here. How have your experiences changed you?
Right, here we go. Basically, I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. I had a rough upbringing, like violence in my life, and substance misuse spiraled out of control from the age of 13 for me. And then I kind of hit rock bottom, and then I just thought I want a better life, and I had a spiritual awakening inside, and I knew I could turn my life around. And what I've been through now, I've changed all those negatives into a positive by wanting to help other people live a better life, because I am so happy inside now, and I'm in a really good place, and I've got a different outlook on the future. I see the beauty in life now, and I just want to help people thrive. So it's changed. I've gone through immense changes in the last 6 years, and I'm just thriving now. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey.
I wish you could all see the wicked smile that I've got on my face behind this mask. it's just an absolute pleasure to hear you talk about that. It really is.
Yeah.
We've been asked for our reflections on what collective resilience means in Wales, because that's the theme of the conference today. I think we've shown what we can do, and I think we didn't know what we could do before until something like the pandemic hit us, give us a major wake-up call, and actually all those barriers and that red tape just got out of the way. So I think we're in the best place that we've ever been for taking this forward and for getting the building blocks in place for homelessness to end in Wales. Like the Minister says, it's going to take time. We're under no illusion about that. But before the pandemic, I was kind of the opinion that we would never have the resilience to stop homelessness and to end it completely. The pandemic has changed my mind. I've seen what we're capable of now. If people are serious about ending homelessness and we have the political will behind that, things change and our resilience will build. Question here about the Homeless World Cup. Yes, we were involved in that. Oh, that was one of the best weeks of my whole life. Absolutely brilliant. We had the whole Homeless World Cup in Cardiff. It's nearly 2 years ago now. And there has been some legacy work off the back of that. Michael Sheen is still looking at various projects. Actually, there's a project that we're collaborating with the Centre for Homelessness Impact on that we'll release more details about soon. But yeah, the work hasn't stopped on that. I think there was so much achieved and so many people came forward and so many people engaged in ways that they'd never engaged before. And that showed that, well, not only the environment stuff brings people together, but sport and shared interest and shared passion is what brings communities together. So that's the legacy piece to take away from the Homeless World Cup. Oh, I wish we were back there again. That was just one of the best weeks I've ever had. Absolutely brilliant. Is there scope for the Welsh homeless sector to work with organisations and learn from work of everything that's happening in Scotland? Definitely. That's a great question. And when we first started the Homeless Action Group, we looked at a lot of the work that Scotland had been doing. So it was really good to have somebody who'd asked similar questions and done similar things to what we were trying to achieve in the Homeless Action Group. But yeah, we're always keeping a close eye on what's happening in the other devolved nations, because there's always things to learn. You're an inspiration. That's what you are. Well done, Rusty. These are all the things that are coming in. I think that's been an absolutely great session and an absolute pleasure to be part of. So just to sort of summarise what we've heard today, we've had a great opening address from our Minister. We are assured that the momentum is going to stay on homelessness and housing, even though it's in with a much larger political brief. Julie James is still absolutely committed to making sure we don't lose the momentum that we built during the pandemic, and to make sure that we address the ultimate need, which is housing supply. We can put all the interventions in the world in place, but there's just not enough homes in Wales, and we're honest about that. We know that that's where we are. But with innovation and with commitment, I really do think that can change. And it's really refreshing for me to hear Julie say that, yeah, we know there's this big problem. We know we have to do a stack of building, but we're going to do it without damaging the environment. How important is that to you?
Oh, definitely. 100%. Very important to me. Yeah. Mustn't damage the environment. Not at all.
No, it's
as low impact as possible.
Yeah. Ultimately, if we don't save the planet, we are all homeless. That's that's the impact. We've got to save the bees. We've got to save each other. We've got to look after the environment around us.
Yeah. And
we've got to see the resources channeled in the right way.
Yes.
So I think there's some really hard questions that we need to ask about the way that we spend money in Wales. What services are we offering that really deliver the impact that we want to see?
Yeah.
How do we do things differently? Because when we're forced to work together and to find an answer now, actually there was some great ideas that came out that we'd just never tried before. It really sort of forced that innovation.
Yeah.
So any takeaway messages for you, Rusty, from the session?
What would I like to leave?
If you could say anything to everybody out there about ending homelessness, how your experience has been affected, any of that stuff, what would you want to say? Put you on the spot now, and
I know,
I've
yeah.
never seen him this quiet before. Ever. Is there anything new that you've heard today that's just made you think, oh yes, this is going to change?
Yeah, how everybody came together in the pandemic, and it's so nice to see that people are fighting to change the homeless situation, and I thank you all. So yeah.
We are definitely together in this. I think we're all as passionate as we ever were about ending homelessness, and now we know what we can do. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens over the next few years, really. Jenny Thompson from Langunada says, thanks, Lindsay, thanks, Rusty. Togetherness will see these projects through.
Yes.
And I absolutely agree with that. So much love from Cardiff in Wales. That's the view of what's happening in our neck of the woods. Sorry if that turned into the Wallet show, but why wouldn't it? Just to emphasise that we also applaud the local authorities and all the other services in Wales that are also doing brilliant and awesome things. So we'll leave the session there. Diolch yn fawr